Welcome to Labyrinth2 Part 2. So I'm coming at this from the standpoint of couples. If it, in the way it gets read, resonates with you in some other way, certainly run with it. I'm just going to bring it down to the combination of masculine and feminine energy. So here we go. Let's start with the line that is the archetypal energies behind the reading. It's these three cards: the sun, the Hierophant, and the moon. And so this is an overall line, relates to everyone in the reading. Nice balance here, nice juxtaposition of forces. Sun, moon, male, female, father, sun, mother, moon. So the idea of doing this together in partnership as a team is really strong to begin with. And you notice that we have two individuals here that are joining. They've crossed the river, they built the wall that separates now from the past, and the sun is smiling with all its benevolence on them. It's the acceptance of both parts of our nature, the human part, the animal part. And sunlight, of course, is sunlight. It bathes everything unconditionally. All you have to do is walk out and it doesn't matter who you are, you get full sunlight. Balanced by moonlight. So the sun brings in all the daylight perceptions, evaluations. The moon brings the nighttime, the introspection, the light of those things that are within and maybe out of sight. But just as important as everything outside. So, how do we get that combination in synchronicity? Through the Hierophant. The one who tells you the law, the one who brings the heavenly energy down to earth. And I think that the overall message in this line is that you're blessed to do this together. Caveat: do it with visiting the spirit of the moment together. So if we move over to the feminine line, which is the top line here, that'll be first. Masculine line, that'll be second. The overall line, the kind of conclusion of all this flowing down energy. So, beginning with the feminine, or let's talk for a moment before we go there about the combination of these two lines, or what's the overall impression? Given that we've had all this benevolence and getting radiation of different sorts from the skies, the heavens, and the blessings therein. But then we go over to energy that looks very different. We've got all the swords in this line. We've got swords and wands with a 5 of wands here in this line. So it's obviously, on the surface of things, not a dance in the park, which is good. It's the kind of energy that causes those who buy in to go to places that they wouldn't have otherwise, without challenging times, without something to tackle that maybe doesn't come so easily. The rewards, however, exponentially go up as the challenges go up. So we got, in the feminine line, we got Nine of Swords. We've got Five of Wands. And sitting in the middle is Justice, called by some tarot masters the most perfect woman in the entire deck. Pretty good. That's pretty strong. So it's looking to me like she's a big mitigator here, obviously. I mean, she carries the sword and the scales. But in this case, both are going to be needed, I believe. So if this is considered a hinge card in the center position that both of these hinge upon, makes sense. You keep these energies separate from each other. The energy of the Nine of Swords separated from the energy of the Five of Wands. So distinctions can be made. And I have a feeling that with this reading, the role of the feminine through Justice, kind of put Justice as a filter for the feminine energy, is huge. And I guess it makes sense, right? If people are spending more time at home, in a typical household from, let's say, conventional thinking, the woman of the house is the matron of the house. She knows more about the house and how it works than anybody else, and manages it. It's kind of inherent for generations that the woman manages the household. So in this case, that carries some clout. Unfortunately, Justice is up to the task. Sword and balance, the scales. Masculine line. Well, by himself, he's got some kind of a choice that is taken him to a place that's maybe new, but is also pretty dynamic, because this Nine of Swords can be looked at as the waiting, standing in the wings, ready to walk on stage, and that on that stage is completion, some kind of completion, leading to stability. And let me get back to this card later, because I think it has a lot to say. It's got a hidden grace, if you will, here. So, in addition to working this way, I mean, we know that we as human beings can work laterally, or we can work vertically. And it's true also here. The male energy can work horizontally and just be within itself. But we're talking about partnership here. Two individuals here, two acolytes here, and a pathway into new territory, into unknown territory, guided by the goddess mother spirit. So it makes sense to do this in whatever way is required to make it work. And first of all, let's take note of the fact that we have a 9 of Swords in both lines. That's very interesting. And the fact that they're there means that certain energy, some kind of an energy, is being generated in this reading by both the feminine and the masculine that is the same. But it's the same until it gets conveyed into the being of the masculine and into the being of the feminine, processed, and then emerges as something. And what lends itself to a successful something that emerges, I think, is the fact that these 9 of Swords, which can be bugaboos and irritations in a situation at home where you're perhaps not accustomed to being with each other as much, can be an escalation of something unplanned and unwanted. However, nice part of almost like a bit of a release from that challenge here is by relying on the partner, the vertical way the energy is flowing. Where with this 9 of Swords, this, which is a very complex, 9 swords, just take it as 9 swords here and 2 swords here, right? Even though we're talking about, yes, choice, and yes, some kind of a conflict or confusion about how am I going to get to completion on this. And when the complexity comes in, perhaps the simplicity of something like, maybe it'll be a good idea to just try biting off small chunks of this issue and taking care of them and taking care of the next 2 and the next 2 until you're all the way at the end, and then we'll figure it out, kind of thing. Instead of trying to fit all 9 swords energy down your gullet in one fell swoop. That's helpful for the feminine. Now we get to the 9 of Swords with the masculine, and something similar can happen with justice. That balancing energy, that reminder that you can have the sword that cuts and stay close to the truth, your truth, and you can maintain balance. You can maintain a happy harmony. And what works better than a harmonious household? You know the answer. To continue, please go to Labyrinth 2, Part 3.